What is up, guys? This is Matt Cox back with another episode of the Saucetown Investor Podcast. I'm going to start you off today with a passage from the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholders letter to the shareholders that Warren Buffett writes each year. This thing's absolute gold. If you're listening to this on Monday, my blog that came out on Friday goes more in depth on the shareholder letter from Warren and some things we can learn from it. But here's a passage that I'm going to read to you guys. Quote, "A decent batting average in personnel decisions is all that can be hoped for. The cardinal sin is delaying the correction of mistakes, or what Charlie Munger is Buffett's right-hand man who passed away, what Charlie Munger called, quote, thumb sucking. Problems, he would tell me, cannot be wished away. They require action, however uncomfortable that may be." Now, when it comes to personnel, the most uncomfortable action that you have to take is what? It's firing. It's not something that most people enjoy doing unless you're kind of a sociopath and just really love firing people. But so I have some experience with hiring and firing. I haven't had a million employees, but I've been a business owner for a bit. And in the past, anyone that I've had to fire has been one of two things. Either they were just really not good at their job, or they had serious culture problems that they were they were jerks. I don't know how else to say that. People who are either not showing up to work, or they're being shady or mean to coworkers, or sometimes there's people that just weren't good at the job. And the first type, if they're mean, rude, shady, whatever, I'm not conflict averse. Those people are really, really easy to let go of. They're really easy to fire. I don't dread the conversation at all. The second type, where they're nice and just not good at the job, those are a little less enjoyable. But in a lot of cases, if you think big picture, you are kind of doing most people that are not doing well at a job. If you fire them, a really smart guy told me this last week, they're usually happier 2 weeks later than they were at your company. Now there's the third type, which is what the guy I had to let go of this past week falls under. And this is my first experience with this type of fire. This is a guy who I liked, who was frankly pretty good at his job, and it just wasn't fun to get rid of him. Now, when he started off, he was doing really well, and we had hit a point, we had hit some sort of rut. We'd gone through training, tried to correct things, tried to improve his outcomes, and it just wasn't working. And he wasn't making enough money. He wasn't producing the numbers that we needed him to produce for the company. And it was just time to let him go. And so that's what I had to do. We got on a call, and I broke the news to him. So this is my first time through this kind of fire. But I want to share kind of 3 pointers with you guys that if you're hiring or if you're firing someone, this is just my opinion. I don't claim to be the foremost expert on this, but these are some ideas I'm going to share with you. The first one is do it yourself. I'll say that again, do it yourself. Now, this may not be realistic for everyone. If you're Jeff Bezos, obviously you're not going to have a one-on-one conversation with everyone who gets fired at Amazon. But if you're a small company and somebody's directly reporting to you, handle it yourself. I remember a company I worked at, it was a really small company, and I was an acquisitions guy there, real estate, and we would always be trying to hire people to do what I did, and it was very hard to find someone who was good at it. A lot of people got hired and a lot of people got fired. It was it was not an easy job, not to pat myself on the back too much, but we went through a lot of people trying to do the same thing that I was doing while I was at that company. And a recurring theme every time was that the boss of the company, a guy who I had a lot of respect for in a lot of ways, like he every single time would have his assistant go do the firing for him. In fact, I can remember various meetings I was in where he would say, I'm not going to obviously say names on here, but we would be in a meeting and say, hey, we'll call her name Terry. Okay. Hey, Terry, go fire so-and-so. And she would take off and go fire the person so that he never had to face her. And I'm going to be honest, I just don't think that's cool. It's anybody that you hire, if you're a small company, you owe it to them. Go have that tough conversation and tell them that you're letting them go. Okay, that's the first one. The second one, if somebody's been good to you and hasn't done anything wrong and it just isn't working out, like this guy is a perfect example, and I did this on our call. Ask them how you can help and even provide specifics. So I told him, I said, I'm not going to share his name. Hey, X, it's not working here. We are going to let you go. Is there anything I can do to help you? And I provided specifics. If you need a reference, feel free to put down my number and email. I will give you a positive review because I had a positive experience with you. You didn't do anything wrong here. Okay. Now, if somebody, you don't need to lie to people. Okay. I volunteered this because he did a good job. He did everything I asked and it just didn't work. The results just weren't there. So ask how you can help on the way out. It's the right thing to do. Okay. It's not easy to get a job out there. And if somebody's good to you, you should give it in return. And then the third one, and this, people may disagree with me on this, but my take is don't over explain it. I mean, in this case, we kind of both understood why it was happening, but this is not the time to air your grievances, or if you had done this, or you didn't listen to me, or, you lost me money, whatever. Guys, I forgot where I read this. I think it was on a podcast with a really smart person. But somebody told me the way that you leave things is what people will remember. So you can be at a company for 10 years. And if you act like an a-hole on the way out, you could have a great 9.75 years there. If you just light the place on fire on the way out, that's all anybody will remember. An employee, you can have a great relation, and you never know when you're going to need, when your reputation is going to matter, or when this person might come back into your life. Or, this guy could bring me, I could hire him again in 2 years. He could bring me a deal. There's any number of things that could happen. Don't air your grievances. Don't burn bridges. People remember the last thing that you do. So don't get stuff off your chest. If they really ask and they want to, if they're asking questions, why'd you let me go? It's okay to have some answers ready, but don't use it as your vent session. Okay. Just be very robotic and fire the person and move on. So I hope that helps you guys. Not a real estate episode today, but I hope you take a lesson from this. I know we're not all business owners. We're not all in a position to fire people. But there's a bigger lesson here just in life. Go have the hard conversations. Like I've been out of the dating game for a while, but like dating, when people ghost people, it's the same thing as like wussing out on a firing. Like go have the hard conversation. It feels better after you have it. And after you do a couple of them, you don't dread it anymore. So get used to having tough conversations. Whether that's firing someone, breaking up with someone, or even telling a friend that you don't like what they're doing. Like, just communicate with people and have those tough conversations. Thanks, guys.